My name is Brendan Schnurr. I'm 25 years old and I kiteboard in Ontario. I started kiteboarding back in 2007. I went on a trip to Dominican Republic with my sister and we took some lessons. And as soon as I got back, I bought my first setup and have been hooked ever since. Kiteboarding is a pretty new sport. It's kind of a mixture of wakeboarding and somewhat parasailing. Yeah, kiteboarding kind of started in around 2000 or maybe a couple of years before, but the kites were really kind of behind their time. They were just yanking people around. You could never make it back to the same place you started. And it really became a lot safer for the general public, probably about 2005 and onwards. There's two different parts of kiteboarding. There's kiteboarding and there's kite surfing. Kiteboarding, you're using a twin tip board, which you can ride either direction. It's strapped to your feet and you can jump up in the air up to 30, 40 feet and do big tricks, grabs, spins, flips, everything like that. Kite surfing is the same sort of thing, same kite, you're just on a surfboard instead, and instead of looking for flat water, you're looking for big waves that you can get on and tow yourself into and surf with. When you learn how to kiteboard, it's 90% about flying the kite and about 10% of board skills. So if you do have board skills from another sport like snowboarding or wakeboarding, it helps. But it's a lot about the kite and flying it in the proper places and how to create power with the kite and how to get rid of the power when you need to. There's a lot of things you always have to consider when you're kiteboarding. We're always looking at the wind websites, which tell us if there's any fronts coming through, how strong the wind will be, what the waves will be like. We kind of have to look at a few different sources, make sure it's safe to go out, and then when everything comes together, you can have a great day. In Ontario, kiteboarding's grown quite a bit in the last 5 or so years, especially since I started. There used to only be, 5 guys on the beach when you went, and now if you go on a busy weekend day, there's 30, 40, 50 guys. So it's definitely gaining popularity. I'd say that Ontario probably has about 600-700 people who kiteboard around the Great Lakes. And the great thing about Ontario is that we have all these Great Lakes, so there's usually always somewhere to go that's windy. Some of my favorite spots for kiteboarding around Ontario are like the eastern end of Lake Erie, anywhere on Lake Ontario, up on Georgian Bay at Wasaga Beach, or anywhere on Lake Huron around Sauble Beach. Kiteboarding has introduced me to a lot of people who I wouldn't have met otherwise, and we just travel around together, chasing the strongest winds. It's definitely a lifestyle that I love. Yeah, we've had a couple close call stories kiteboarding when we see some black clouds coming for us and push it as much as we can, try to stay on the water and keep riding, and then all of a sudden the storm hits and you just need to land the kite within a few seconds or else you're going to be pulled away. So we've had some close calls that way, but most of the time it's just fun coming out to the beach on warm days, lots of wind. Kiteboarding's taken me to a lot of different cool places. I've been to Brazil, Dominican Republic, Cuba, Peru, North Carolina, British Columbia, New Brunswick. So it's taken me a lot of places that I wouldn't have gone otherwise. I'd say my favorite location so far was Peru. In Peru there is huge waves and tons of wind, and the waves are just perfect. There's definitely a lot of risk involved in kiteboarding. First of all, you're out really far in the water, and if something happens, you don't have a life jacket, you don't have anything to keep you floating, so you're on your own there. When you put the kite down, it can be challenging to relaunch it at times in the waves. You have to be careful where you go. You never really want to go out further than where you can swim. Another thing is, when you're in Ontario, the water a lot of the time is very cold, so you have to wear a really thick wetsuit. And take into consideration that at any moment your gear might fail and you might be swimming in from out far. You also have to look out for objects that you can hit. I've seen people launch kites with tangled lines and they've just gotten lofted and landed on piles of rocks. I've seen people just get dragged through the water, over beaches. I actually broke somebody's nose when I was learning how to kiteboard because I was getting dragged down the beach and somebody jumped on my back and tried to help me, and I went to pull the release and elbowed him right in the nose. So it's a dangerous sport, and you just have to be really careful with everything you do and make sure that you take lessons before you get started. The thing I love about kiteboarding is you get to explore all these crazy destinations. It's taken me all over Ontario, and it's taken me all over the world as well. And that's something that I definitely wouldn't have done if I wasn't into this sport.